Tonight, you're going to open your banking app before bed. You're going to look at the number in your savings account, and you're going to feel a small, familiar disappointment. It's lower than you planned. It's always lower than you planned. You tell yourself you'll do better next month. You won't. Not because you lack discipline, not because you don't understand math, because your brain was never designed to save money in the first place. Here's the strange part. You know exactly how to save. Spend less than you earn. Put the difference away. A child could explain the concept in one sentence, and yet millions of intelligent, capable adults sit down every month, look at that simple equation, and somehow still end up with nothing left over. If saving were really about knowledge, this problem would have disappeared decades ago. It hasn't, which means the problem was never knowledge. The problem is wiring. For most of human history, there was no such thing as a savings account. There was no concept of money sitting quietly in a bank, growing, waiting. There was only food, and whether you had enough of it today. Your ancestors lived in a world where resources spoiled fast, and were often stolen by someone stronger before they could be stored at all. So the brain developed a simple, brutal rule. If you have it now, use it now. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. This is called present bias, and it isn't a character flaw. It's a survival strategy that kept humans alive for 200,000 years. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent much of his career studying exactly this kind of mismatch, the gap between how humans actually decide and how a purely rational calculator would decide. He and his research partner found that people don't weigh gains and losses evenly. Losing money hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same amount feels good, which sounds like it should make saving easier, not harder. Losing money hurts, so surely you'd want to protect it. But here's the twist. Not spending money on something you want right now doesn't feel like protecting a gain. It feels like a loss, a missed dinner, a missed trip, a missed version of tonight that you'll never get back. Your brain treats saved money as an opportunity you're actively losing, not a cushion you're building. So every time you choose not to spend, some part of you registers it as pain. Now add a second problem on top of the first. The version of you making the decision tonight is not the same person as the version of you who will need the money later. Psychologically, that future self barely feels real. Researchers who study this call it a kind of emotional distance. When people are shown a simulated image of their own face, aged 30 or 40 years, and then asked how much they'd like to save for that older self, the amount they choose to save goes up significantly. Because suddenly that future person isn't an abstraction anymore. It's someone with a face. Without that nudge, your brain treats future you almost like a stranger. And most people, if you're honest, don't prioritize a stranger's needs over their own comfort tonight. This is where the economist Richard Thaler enters the picture. Thaler spent decades studying why humans consistently fail to act in their own long-term financial interest, even when they explicitly want to. His answer wasn't that people are irrational. His answer was that people are predictably irrational in patterns you can actually map. One of his most famous ideas came from a simple observation. If saving requires a decision every single time, an active choice to move money away, most people will lose that fight most of the time. Willpower is not a reliable financial strategy. It has to be removed from the equation entirely. That's why automatic enrollment works so well in retirement plans. When saving is the default, and people have to actively opt out to avoid it, participation rates jump dramatically, not because those people suddenly became disciplined, because the friction moved. Instead of requiring effort to save, it now requires effort not to. Thaler showed that changing the architecture of a decision changes the outcome, even when nothing about a person's actual willpower has changed at all. There's a third piece to this puzzle, and it might be the most uncomfortable one. Spending isn't just about acquiring things, it's about managing feelings. The behavioral economist Dan Ariely has spent years studying the emotional logic behind purchases, and one of his central findings is this: most spending decisions are not driven by need. They're driven by mood, stress spending, celebration spending, boredom spending. Revenge spending after a bad day, when you feel like the world owes you something small and immediate. In each case, the purchase isn't really about the object. It's a chemical shortcut, a quick hit of control in a life that often feels like it has very little. Think about the last time you bought something you didn't plan to buy. Chances are it wasn't triggered by a genuine gap in your life. It was triggered by a feeling, loneliness, exhaustion, a small humiliation earlier that day. The purchase soothed something for about an hour, and then the feeling came back, and so did the impulse to spend again. This is why budgeting apps so often fail on their own. They treat the symptom. They almost never touch the actual trigger underneath it. So if the problem isn't math, and it isn't willpower, what actually works? Not moral lectures about discipline. Structural changes that account for how your brain really operates. Automating your savings the moment your paycheck lands, before your present-biased brain gets a vote, mirrors exactly what Thaler's research found effective. Making your future self feel real, even something as simple as naming your savings account after a specific goal instead of a generic label, taps into that same psychological shift researchers found with the age face experiment. And noticing the emotional trigger behind a purchase, pausing to ask what feeling you're actually trying to buy, interrupts the exact mechanism aerially identified. Small changes to the environment tend to outperform large changes to your intentions. Moving your savings transfer to the same day your paycheck lands removes the moment of temptation entirely, because the money is already gone before your present-biased brain even notices it existed. Deleting a saved card from a shopping app adds just enough friction to interrupt an impulsive purchase, giving the feeling behind it a few extra seconds to fade. None of these changes require becoming a different person. They simply stop asking the old, ancient part of your brain to win a fight it was never built to win. None of this requires more willpower. It requires understanding that willpower was never the tool for this job. Think about how differently you'd treat this problem if a friend brought it to you instead. Imagine they told you, "I keep trying to run 5 miles every single day using only motivation, no schedule, no gym bag packed the night before, no alarm, just raw willpower each morning." You'd tell them that's not a plan, that's a hope. And yet that's exactly how most people approach saving money. Pure willpower, reapplied from scratch every single payday, with no structure to catch them when the willpower runs out. It runs out constantly, not because these people are weak, because willpower is a finite resource and modern life spends it on 100 small decisions before you even open your banking app. Consider how much decision fatigue you accumulate before that moment arrives. What to eat, what to wear, which emails to answer first, which errands to prioritize, how to respond to a difficult text message. By the time you're staring at your account balance late in the evening, you have almost nothing left in the tank to fight a battle against an instinct that's 200,000 years old. It's not a fair fight. It was never going to be a fair fight. The people who seem effortlessly good with money aren't winning that fight more often than you. They've simply built systems so the fight doesn't have to happen at all. There's also a social layer to this that rarely gets mentioned. Humans evolved in small groups where resources were often shared, where hoarding food while others starved could get you cast out, or worse. Some researchers argue that a faint echo of that instinct still lingers, a subtle discomfort around visibly accumulating more than those around you. It's part of why lifestyle creep happens so quietly. Your income rises. Your spending rises to match it, almost immediately, often without a single conscious decision behind it. You're not choosing to spend more. Your baseline for normal has simply shifted, the same way a room that felt bright when you first turned on the light eventually just feels like the room. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it explains something that confuses a lot of people about their own financial history. You probably remember a time when you earned far less than you do now, and somehow it didn't feel that different day to day. That's not a coincidence. That's your baseline moving with your income, silently, without asking your permission first. Now layer in one more piece, because it changes how you should think about every purchase you make. The economist Richard Thaler also studied something called mental accounting, the way people treat money differently depending on where it came from, even though a dollar is a dollar no matter its origin. Money from a tax refund gets treated as free money, spent more loosely than money from a regular paycheck, even though both are equally real and equally yours. A bonus at work feels like it's meant to be spent on something fun, almost as if saving it would be a waste of the moment it represents. This mental accounting isn't logical. It's a story your brain tells about money, based on its emotional origin rather than its actual value. And stories, unlike spreadsheets, are very easy to bend in the direction you already wanted to go. Here's what's strange when you really sit with it. The same brain that stopped your ancestors from starving is the reason your savings account struggles to grow today. The instinct to grab what's available now, because tomorrow was never promised, kept an entire species alive across ice ages, famines, and migrations no map could have predicted. That instinct wasn't a bug. It was, for most of human history, exactly correct. It just hasn't caught up to a world with refrigerators, insurance, and 30-year mortgages. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're running ancient software in a modern operating system, and the mismatch shows up every time you check your balance and feel that small, familiar disappointment. So tonight, when you open your banking app before bed and you look at that number, try seeing it differently. Not as proof that you failed at something simple, but as evidence of exactly how old and how human that instinct really is.